Do you struggle with self-trust? Do you struggle with trusting yourself to make decisions that are for your highest good? In this video, I'm sharing how self-trust literally saved my life without letting fear and doubt to get in the way. I used to struggle with trusting myself. So many of the lovely people I meet with are experiencing the same thing. We are trying to get things right. We're trying to figure out what we should be doing, how we should be being, and then it comes into our decision making. And this can be like this spiraling, stuck place that many of us can experience for a really long time. And that was me. And so an example that I'm thinking of is going in to see someone like a doctor, a physician, someone whose expertise we're needing. We might have a problem. We're looking for a solution. Either way, we need help. And I know I would go in, and of course, they ask what's going on, and you describe it. And then they would do what they do and then come up with some options. And earlier on in my life, I felt very intimidated to speak up if I had a question, and especially if I wanted to maybe question their ideas in the sense of it not being a good fit for me. So I would stuff all this down. I would leave the office and kind of criticize and be hard on myself because I either didn't get a question answered or something I wanted to say didn't get said. And I wasn't ultimately satisfied with the results of what that person was offering. Now, granted, it's not that that person did anything wrong, but if I don't speak up and advocate for myself, what I'm thinking, what I'm feeling, what are my perceptions? And I used to be very intimidated by the so-called experts, people that had more training. And I looked at them like, you have all the answers. They know what they know is what I know now. So now it still creeps up, but the way that it changed my life is that at one point I got pretty ill. And none of the folks that I were going to that specialized in those issues and presentations in someone's body had any answers. They ultimately told me, you're going to have to live with it. And so it was a pattern. It was IBS. I'll just name what it is. I actually have another video somewhere posted about it, I think. And sometimes they just don't know, but I didn't give up. So it was interesting because I didn't give up. And I kept looking to other people I could go meet with. And it's almost like I had to experience what wasn't going to work to get to what did work. And that was because I kept advocating for myself. And earlier on, I would prepare questions because in the moment we can get like our mind freezes. We can't really think. And then we leave it go, darn it, I wish I would have said this. The thing that we couldn't bring up in the moment. So I would write down questions ahead of time if I had any. And then I just learned to, through the process of self-trust, which requires getting out of our head, not allowing the self-doubt, that fear and self-doubt to take over, because when that part's taking over, we can't trust ourselves. We can't build it. We can't access it. Self-trust is at a more expanded level of awareness and consciousness and faith and knowing that I have some wisdom just being me, having lived the life I've lived. Wisdom, maybe I got some ideas from something else I listened to that I want to say to this doctor or whatnot that would not have been in their experience, but that could be an option. I've had so many scenarios in such a positive way where because I asked a question and they'd say, oh my gosh, that's such a good point. They hadn't considered that. And then that led to another possible option to resolve my concerns. So you have natural gifts in all that you are. Whatever those are, your intuition, that higher wisdom that is inherently who you are, can be accessed if we're not in any version of fight, flight, freeze. And in that passive mode where we're waiting for someone else to give us the solutions, there is nothing wrong with asking for help. We do want to consult people. But what often gets left out is, how does this feel to me? The discernment. And logically, rationally, as well as how does that sit with me in my body? Our bodies even have responses to show us this feels good, this doesn't feel good. We'll get tense or tight, constricted versus feeling lighter or more open. But if we're up here, we are not tuned into that. We are just not aware that that's a thing. And that's where we cultivate self-trust. And what I realize now is, this can probably sound pretty obvious, if I'm in a space of self-trust, self-doubt can't coexist in the same moment. Because self-trust is my true self coming in. Self-doubt is a part of me. And that awareness is everything. And it's not like a complex formula. There's not 10 steps. It doesn't have to take weeks, months, or years. It can happen just like that. It does involve recreating it. Because if we keep going back, living up here, and then we're in automatic responses, being in fear, where we make decisions from is what's going to shift from self-doubt and fear to self-trust. And we're not going to know everything we need to know necessarily about what we want answers to, but our self-trust can guide us to the next person who can do this thing that leads to the solution. And when I look back, it's not that I did anything wrong in not trusting myself. It's what I needed to go through to get to where I am now. And I'm grateful. I'm grateful for the parts of me that step up and advocate. Now they can hardly keep quiet. Sometimes I have to tame it down a little, because I can get kind of fired up about, you're not meeting my need, you're not listening to me. And that's still not really being in self-trust, so to speak. And so there's nothing wrong with it. It serves a purpose. But for me, what feels good to me, and you can see if this resonates for you, I love to get into my true self that can communicate everything with respect and consideration, maybe even compassion, certainly love for myself, but respect for the other person. The other people, I believe, they're not trying to lack or something in the way they're helping me. They're doing what they know. And no one knows everything. I think that's another piece here. No one knows everything. There's no way to know everything. There's no way to probably know a fraction. We know what we've experienced. We know what we've tried. We don't know what we haven't tried. We don't know what we're not aware of. That's what the self-trust can help you access. That would be like the biggest piece I could share. That you don't need to know all the answers. It's just come into the moment now. The now moment is where all awareness is, where all creation is. So I hope that's been helpful, and please feel free, ask questions. I'm happy to respond. If you'd like to work with me one-on-one, you can access the links in my description. Would be happy to meet with you. Thanks so much. Bye for now.